I strongly believe that in the next 5 to 10 years, the demand for data consultants of all kinds will continue to grow rapidly. Just in how fast things are changing, whether it's LLMs or even the different technologies in the cloud, companies are going to need to rapidly adjust, both in terms of their skill sets as well as migrating to new technologies, which then often pushes the demand for consultants. Which means I believe there's a massive opportunity for you if you're out there to start consulting, whether on the side or starting a full-time company like I did. But in order to get there, I've had to learn a ton of things along the way. I've had to make a ton of mistakes. I've learned a ton of lessons, and I'm wanting to share those with you here today. I want to give you a guide on how you can actually start your own data analyst consulting company. Whether it's honestly data engineering, data analytics, honestly almost any consulting company, this will speak to you, because we all have to have and solve the same similar sets of problems. Mostly being around getting clients, but even beyond that, once you get clients, how do you make sure you're doing the work that you want to do? How do you make sure that you're charging the prices that will lead you to whatever your end goal might be? Both in terms of the fact that you're delivering the value that the clients need and want, but also maybe, you're trying to compete with your current salary. How do you find projects that equate to that? And so we're going to go over all of that, as well as a bunch of lessons I've learned along the way in this video. Again, you can look at this as your complete guide, because this really will be a great guide for you, not only getting your first client, but honestly, all the little things in between. Again, how you can have your sales call and everything else. And honestly, if this video isn't sufficient, I have put together a course that I've shared below in the link. But let's go through this video and build that solid foundation in terms of your understanding of how to get clients, how to land clients that you want, how to make sure you're pricing correctly, and everything else almost in between. First, let's talk about a few things that maybe you didn't realize would be important as you're growing as a consultant. The first thing that I didn't realize was the importance of vendor partnerships, and honestly, partnerships in general. So one of the things that will become important as you become more known in the space is partnering with specific vendors. What do I mean? Well, let's talk about vendors like Snowflake, Databricks, things like Astronomer. There are so many other vendors, honestly. Just look at the mad data landscape. The more you can partner with these companies, and again, you kind of have to find vendors that fit your size, the more likely either you'll send them work and they'll send you work. And this is one of the keys to start slowly taking on larger projects, because it's really hard to be introduced into those 100, 200, 300K projects, right? Like, those are hard to break into. So one of the key things you'll eventually start doing is setting up vendor partnerships. And one of the things you probably didn't know about vendor partnerships is, well, commission. If you land a client and for whatever Acme vendor, and you sell 100K worth of whatever their product is, more than likely they'll give you somewhere in the range of like a 10 to 20%, depending on how new the company is, commission, which again, shouldn't be your goal. More than likely your goal is to get 100K clients. A 10, 20K commission is nice, but it's not going to keep bringing you new business. So it's important to realize that yes, it's nice, but it's just an add-on. So there's a ton of these little things that I didn't know as I was landing my first few clients. But let's be clear. In terms of problems you're trying to solve right now in your journey of becoming a consultant, here's kind of how I view it in terms of like prioritization. So first, before worrying about vendor partnerships and all these various things, step one is figuring out what exactly you're going to do. What is the skill that you have right now? And if you're in tech, it's kind of easier. We kind of have a cheat code. Most of those skills, whether it's data science, data engineering, programming, are all high paying skills, right? Like, everyone needs them. You can make a lot of money consulting almost accidentally. So that's great, right? Like, you have to have a skill. From there, you need to figure out eventually what your niche is. Now, this is interesting. Like, if I look at how I found my niche, there's a ton of different niches out there. When I first started, I was like, maybe I'll do data science consulting. So I really pushed hard into that. And I didn't find as much work there. But as I was doing that, I'm writing about Airflow, I'm writing about data warehouses, and I'm slowly starting to get more and more work in that space. So as you're trying to figure out your niche, as you're trying to figure out who exactly you sell to, maybe either through writing articles, writing LinkedIn posts, and again, we'll talk a little bit more about that later, you'll slowly start to find that people respond to different pieces of content. For example, I think Power BI and Tableau are two of the biggest areas that you can start consulting in today, and they tend to be really easy to break into because you can show off what you're doing really easily on somewhere like LinkedIn or wherever, because it's so visual, it's so tactile. Unlike some of these other skills like data warehousing or even data science, data science has the benefit of notebooks, using dashboards is a great way to show like, hey, I can deliver you some dashboard that you've always wanted. Don't just build some sports dashboard that, everyone else builds. Really think about like, hey, marketers, what will a marketer want to see, right? Like what will a marketing VP want to see? Because they're going to see that dashboard and maybe want to pay for your services. I've seen people have that happen even when they weren't consulting. So it's important to figure out which niche you're going to sell into, because that's how you're going to start eventually creating content and also reaching out to specific prospects, possibly. Again, for me, I really figured out that, Airflow, data warehousing, those things just had so many problems in there that even single pieces of content of mine have driven $300,000-$400,000, even though it's like one video. One final quick pointer, I think Databricks is a great place you can kind of start consulting in right now, because it's this piece of technology that is difficult to use and people need help working with it. So if you're looking for a niche, I'd say that's a great place to start. All right, next you need to get your first client. Now, not everyone has a giant YouTube following or has a giant social media presence, and that takes time to build. So it'd be silly for me to say like, hey, just go put out a ton of content and people will notice you. You should be doing that, and we'll again talk about that shortly. But there's a few first places that if you're just starting out, you should probably hit, especially if you're in the US. These are definitely somewhat country specific. For example, if you're in the US and you've worked a few years in the industry, you probably have an okay network. Even in 3, 4, 5 years, if you've built up a decent network. So what you can first do is reach out to a lot of the people you've worked with in the past. Obviously, if you're still working at a full-time job, you probably shouldn't reach out to people you're currently working with, but you can reach out to the people you've worked with in the past and say hello, whatever their name is, John, Jamie, etc. And then go from there. I really enjoyed. If you're really close with them, you can say something like, hey, it's been a while since we've hung out. I'd love to reconnect. I'm starting this consulting company. I'm looking for these types of projects. I just love to know if either you or someone else in your company is needing this type of work. More than likely, you should be targeting people at the VP or director level, or at least manager level, because that could eventually go to the right person. And I'll put a few sample emails below that you can kind of send out and just try to feel the waters, because you want some level of warm leads. Even when you're doing sales and you're trying to do cold leads, it just is so much easier to get warm leads. Unless you know exactly who the person is that you're targeting, doing these warmer leads with networks and reaching out to people you already know and trying to use that network first is generally best. All right, if your network isn't very large, and again, you don't have to feel limited to just people you've worked with. I mean, uncles, aunts, anyone that you know that maybe is in a position that could also know someone that has the work that you want to do is worth reaching out to. So don't feel like you're limited to the 3 people you've worked with. There are so many ways you can find people that have that work, and they just need to know that you exist. So it's about getting your name out there. But if you don't have that option, you can also look into third-party websites like Upwork. The challenge here is that on Upwork, you will arguably, especially if you're just starting out, be going on a race to the bottom. Like everyone else is going to be willing to work cheaper than you, and it really is hard to stand out, especially initially. Don't get me wrong, once you have a good rating, you can definitely charge more. As someone who has purchased Upwork services, I am happy to pay a little more if someone has really good ratings, right? Like I'll look past a lot of things as long as there's really good ratings and the cost seems fair, but it will be hard at first. So that's why I think if you're in the US in particular, it's not necessarily the best option. You can spend some time there and you'll definitely find some work. But at the end of the day, the route to actually getting to the better projects will take time. It'll take a few months of doing smaller projects where you're not getting paid as much. And that's not your goal overall. Again, if you're trying to break 300, 400, 500K, you're going to need to find much bigger projects. All right, so let's say you've got that first client. Great, now you can start showing off your work. You can start showing off the work that you've done, both in terms of side projects. You can find a portfolio. You can also put together use cases. You should, at this point, have a site. Like if I was to build you the actual roadmap, if you want to follow the roadmap that, again, I've linked below, one of those first steps is definitely build a site, right? Step 1, decide what you're going to do. Step 2, put together a basic site because you're going to send people there. Because you're going to send people there as you're talking to them, as you're reaching out about networking. Step 3, once you've got this site put together, now you can start actually sharing some of your work there. You can put out either use cases that you've done in the past, even if it's just something that maybe was at a past job that you worked at a few years back. You can talk through it, write a blog article about it, or you can put up a few GitHub projects. There's a lot of different ways you can kind of show your work. But at the end of the day, in order to actually get clients, there's a few key ways that I view getting clients. And at the end of the day, you kind of have to pick 1 or 2 of them and be very good at them in order to grow a larger business. Because the way I look at it is essentially you have to get to this point where you have a massive funnel of prospects coming in. Many of them will be smaller projects, right? 2,000 a month, 4,000 a month, 5,000 a month. These projects are great when you start out, and it's good to get, your feet wet. But eventually, as you keep getting better, as you've gotten past this first client, as you're building up your portfolio, you need to get to this point where you have enough clients coming in, or potential clients, that you can say no to some of them. Because some of them it doesn't make sense to take on every little project. It takes up a ton of brain space. And so if you're really trying to get to a point where your target number is $500,000 a year, you can't take every 5K project that comes your way. It's just impossible. You have to learn to say no to those. So how do you get to a point where you can say no? That's the key here. Well, there are a few key places you can build your essentially pipelines in. First, the most obvious for me is marketing. Marketing is a very broad term. I mean, I kind of put branding in there as well, but marketing, branding, this is just getting the word out there that you solve problems, and you're going to write specifically what those problems are that you solve. You can do this on so many different platforms these days. I love, for example, doing the test out ideas on LinkedIn, write longer pieces of content, Substack, and then maybe even make a video of that piece of content. Because that's a great way to test out an idea, see if it's connecting with people. From there, now you can commit to larger pieces of content. But the question with marketing becomes, who are you targeting? Who is your target audience? If you look at my pieces of content, you'll find some that probably speak to you if you're a beginner in data engineering, and you'll find some that maybe don't, or maybe more nuanced in terms of like the questions that they answer, like mistakes people make when setting up Airflow. That is very specifically targeted towards people who use Airflow and might even be having either challenges setting it up or are thinking about setting it up and want to avoid, some of the mistakes. So from my perspective, that is targeting one of my key client areas, or key kind of personas that I target, which is people who will likely be using Airflow and need to set it up. And so when you're putting out these pieces of content, you need to think, who is the person that I'm reaching out to? If you're a person that develops dashboards, especially if you're like, let's say in the marketing space, maybe you specifically talk about the metrics that you think are important, how to calculate those metrics, how you build a dashboard for those metrics, the mistakes people make when they use these metrics and translate these metrics, basically everything around that space and the problems that your persona will run into. And so you're really trying to target that key area. And that's just, again, marketing. Again, there's a lot of key things you can do here. I have entire sections on this in the course, but basically you can just start with trying out things on LinkedIn. There is no risk. You don't need to feel scared. I think that's the biggest thing, is like people feel scared. Like, what if someone says something like, I'm dumb? I've had that happen, and you just kind of have to be okay with that. Sometimes I did make a silly mistake, either in something that I wrote, and honestly, from my perspective, great. Now I've learned. Now I've corrected stuff, and maybe it's in public, but I've learned. Or two, that's just always going to happen. If anything, initially you're going to have a lot of love for whatever you're writing, and as you get bigger, people will eventually start to find you that don't like you, and that's just kind of how it works. So don't be afraid to test out different pieces of content in different mediums. Again, I'll put up a few areas here and a few thoughts I have on them as well, because there's too many. There's LinkedIn, Medium, Substack, your own blog, which you definitely need to have, and just a ton of other areas that you can put out content if marketing is going to be the thing that you do. Now, if marketing isn't the thing that you're going to do, another option, we've already talked about networking, is sales. Sales is kind of connected with marketing to a degree, but I feel like there's specific tactics that people mean when they say sales. For example, the cold email. So reaching out to people on LinkedIn or, via email that you think have a problem that you can solve. The hard thing here is you don't always know if the person you're reaching out to has that problem. So figuring out how to find the right targets is probably the hardest part here. I had a friend who would just essentially target people working with other consulting companies that they felt were inferior, and they would say like, hey, we think our product is superior. We see that you're likely working with these team. Can we work with you instead? I promise you we'll do a better job. That's a very specific approach, but you might have something where that either someone's posting about looking for a data engineer, or maybe they're posting about needing help with one problem or the other, and you might want to reach out to them. I think one of the hard things with sales is you have to realize that it probably won't be the first email that you probably send to this prospect that actually lands you the deal. Like, you can't get disheartened because, you sent one email out and they didn't respond, right? Like, they didn't connect with it. You're going to have to send probably 10, 20 emails to a single person to make sure that you finally get maybe a phone call with them. And that's the hard thing sometimes with sales, is it can be a little bit hard if you don't have the right messaging and the right value statement. But once you find that right value statement, it can just start hitting and hitting and hitting, and you'll start waiting for a while until it doesn't work anymore, then you'll have to find something else. Now, there's a ton of other things I have up here, but let's just talk about vendor partnerships, because I referenced that earlier. This is another key area of where you can get larger projects from. Vendors, especially vendors that are growing rapidly, need help actually implementing their solution, right? Snowflake doesn't have an entire team of people that can do everything in terms of implementing some sort of data solution. More than likely, they're just going to try to set up the tables, maybe for a client, maybe do some basic initial work. In fact, most of the time I found they just kind of set up some views on top of views, which might just cost more eventually in the long term. But their goal is to really make the client happy, get things working first, and get out the door, right? Like they've got to get to the next client that they need to set up and make successful. So because of that, they often will hire consultants or partner with consultants to help them either complete projects or close a deal. Sometimes the thing that stops Snowflake or Databricks or, name another vendor from closing a deal is that the company that they're selling to doesn't have the talent and they are scared of taking on this solution. So if you have a close partnership, in particular with an account executive at these companies, like I'm saying with the company, generally you do set up partnerships with these companies, but it really is that person-to-person relationship that you need to set up with an account executive that you've likely either helped them land a client or done something with them that they are inclined to work with you, that then they'll start hopefully sending you those projects that just need a little extra help to close. Because again, they're incentivized, the account executive, to figure out how to close a project. And sometimes that's just, we need to find talent, and you want to be the talent that is the solution on that end. And that's, again, how you find those bigger projects. Because sometimes otherwise you're just figuring out whatever projects kind of come out, maybe that haven't gone through as scrutinous as a process. Maybe they're just looking for small 5K projects. Whereas often if clients have already gone through the process of picking solutions, they're likely a little larger. They're likely doing a lot of research and trying to find the right things. So there's a lot more effort in terms of how big this project will be. So as you're trying to grow to this 500 plus K a year business, that's how you're going to have to do it. All right. So again, we've covered a few more ways to acquire clients here. There are still plenty more referrals, networking again, but just expanding upon that. If you really want, again, you can find out some more information below. But now let's talk a little bit about the importance of sales after you've done the cold lead. Because here's the thing. Regardless of if you use marketing to get a client into the door, if you use sales, if you use networking, whatever, at the end of the day, maybe you'll close some 5K clients with an okay sales process. Maybe you'll close some 10K. Maybe you'll close some 20K. But once you start getting past 6 figures, clients do expect more because you start dealing with procurement teams. You start dealing with other teams that are not just the person who's trying to get your service. You're dealing with legal teams, you're dealing with procurement, you're dealing with all these other people that are going to look at your contract and scrutinize it. I know I've had times where I've sent a contract in and they're like, oh, where's the terms and conditions section of it? It was very short. I had one, but it's very short initially. And since then I've had to expand it because larger clients expect a much larger set of terms and conditions. And there's just all these little things that you're going to pick up along the way. So what you need to do, especially with these larger clients, is really, one, build trust with them because they're larger. They're going to sell you, 100, 200K project, but also really take them through an actual process. What that means is you can kind of set this up in a few different steps. The first step being your kind of research and pre-sales step. So here you're likely just digging into who the client is, likely what their problems are. You really want to be prepared, right? You might get away with sloppier sales processes and not doing as much research for smaller projects. But bigger projects, there's just this expectation that you kind of know what's going on. Some of this is just going to be reaching out to whoever your contact is initially, just trying to get any information that they're willing to give. If they've got PDFs on diagrams and designs, getting that, what their goals are, make sure that those are as clear as possible. Hopefully before the call, but if you can't, that's okay. Now, once you've done that, you'll have your initial sales call. In this call, you're going to basically just do the basic stuff. Introduce yourself, have some open-ended questions, basically what are usually called discovery questions, to figure out, is this project even good for you and for them, right? It's okay to ask them a lot of questions early on. In fact, I just was talking to someone where they gave the advice to other people, basically, that they give a precursor to their prospects to say, hey, I know I'm going to ask a lot of questions. It's going to seem maybe too much at first, but this is how I know, am I a good fit for you? Is my service good for what we're doing? And in this first sales call, as you're starting to understand what the problem is, really provide a diagnostic solution. Really try to figure out, oh, I'm hearing you. So one, repeat kind of what they're saying. And here's what I think the solution could be. Maybe 1 or 2 possible solutions that you think could work based on what they've said. And more than likely, if you've been doing a good job listening, they'll hopefully be like, yes, that's exactly what we're looking for. And then from there, you can be like, okay, well, now let's start to understand maybe the scope of this project, because you can do the same type of migration project for 2 different clients. And one will be $50,000 and another will be $500,000. Just due to scope, meaning how many tables are we talking about? What are we going from on-prem to cloud? Are there firewalls involved? Where are the data sources? There's a ton of different questions. And some of this you can just have in a questionnaire afterwards, especially if they don't have time. But this just sets up your initial ability to, again, figure out both what the problem is that you're going to write a proposal for, and also understand the scope of it. Like, how large is it actually? And now, honestly, some people might set up a second call after this. I think it's not a bad idea to have your first call be like 30 minutes, just have this initial thing, have this relationship start to be built, and then set up a second call. It can seem like a lot, but I think this does a few things. 1, it lets everyone digest information. 2, it starts to further build trust, right? Like, they're not just seeing you once and then they forget who you are, because they're going to have a ton of other consulting companies pitching for this project. But by doing this, you're making sure you're staying top of mind. So you've got another call with them again, maybe the next 2 days or 3 days, where you'll do kind of a general presentation where you'll pitch a few different solutions, right? You'll be like, hey, here's solution 1. I think it should be about 50K. This is why I think it'll be this much. This is what you'll get at the end. And you'll be like, hey, here's option 2. It's maybe 100K. Here's what I'm offering for 100K. Let me know which one works. And this can be before you write your proposal, because I think one of the mistakes that I've made plenty of times is I'll write a proposal thinking the answer is yes, and it takes a ton of time to put together a nice proposal, and people will say no. So what you're really trying to do is get to the point where you already know if they're likely going to say yes or no to your proposal, even before going through the work of filling it out. So figure out what the price is, the options, what your goal is at the end of it. You can just build a basic presentation or a few documents that kind of cover that. Let them figure out which solution that they like. And once they've kind of let you know, you can now start going into possibly some negotiation. If they would be like, maybe 100K is too much, but if we cut these different services out, what would that be? Or maybe if they're very happy with it, you write together a strong proposal that personally solves the problem that your prospect is solving. And from there, if you've done everything well, hopefully you've got a closed proposal. Again, you don't want to rush this. There's no need to like one call. Let's just go from here. Let's have one call. Let's have another call. Let's really know each other. Let's really get to understand your problem. Let's review some possible options of solutions, because at the end of the day, all of this helps, again, build trust, helps build transparency, and helps hopefully bring you closer to that yes, and also stand out against the rest of the competition. Because again, it's one thing to do a bunch of freelance projects that are kind of small and you're just putting them together. If you really want to start expanding and going beyond that and taking on bigger projects and maybe only taking on 1 or 2 clients at a time, you really have to get these projects that take a little more effort. Honestly, I've been on sales motions, as they would call it, for 3 or 4 months for some of these 200 or 300K projects, and just be okay with that. Yes, you might be taking some small projects along the way while you're waiting for those 4 months to close, but you're always trying to get to that end goal, and it takes a little more time. So far, this has been a long video, so I want to just go over a few things with what we've covered so far. If you don't recall, we've talked about, consulting in terms of how to start picking your overall niche and which solutions you're going to work on. From there, getting your first clients, as well as how you can get more clients from there in order to get larger and larger projects. And then from there, we've expanded to talking about sales and kind of going through the actual process of closing a deal. And now that you've closed the deal, it's going to be about delivering value and continuing, hopefully, that relationship. Because as you're working with this client, things will change. As you're trying to deliver the work, I've had plenty of projects that said, we're going to start with one thing. And by the time you even start the project, either they've already made some changes to their infrastructure. They're like, now we need some other things kind of done, especially again, if they're larger projects. So you're constantly having to adjust a little bit with the client in terms of making sure they understand what's going on in terms of expectations and what you're delivering, and making sure you communicate all of those things as soon as possible. Because your goal is to not just, again, land your current client, deliver what they've asked, but continue hopefully working with that client. And so part of that is throughout the process of actually delivering whatever it is making sure that you're staying on top of communicating with the client, what you're doing, how your project is going, what's blocking it, if things are ahead or behind schedule, and assessing the happiness of your client. Usually I do this with, weekly touch bases plus some sort of weekly summary email that just says, hey, here's what's been done, here's what's going to be done, here's what's blocked. And again, be very transparent. If things are blocked, don't wait a week until, we have that meeting with my client. Reach out to them, get things unblocked, get things moving. Really, a lot of the stuff that's going to happen in the project that's going to get blocked has nothing to do with the technical things. It's all going to be like someone went on vacation, someone is not wanting to give me access to this data, something that has to do with people. And so the more you can get those things out of the way to actually solve the technical problems, and the more you can let your client do that. Again, I think sometimes we as engineers think we need to solve every problem. The more you can let your client do that, one, they stay on top of what you're doing. They know kind of what's going on. And two, they feel like they're being helpful. You shouldn't be so obnoxious that they feel like they can't do their work. But if it's like one thing here and there, you need to do that, because otherwise it's your fault for not getting things unblocked, and that doesn't look good. And that's how you, again, have unhappy clients that you are going to have to work even harder to win back. So that's just my few tips in terms of delivering. Again, I go over that more in the course, but hopefully this large guide was very helpful for anyone who wants to start consulting today. Again, I built this, we call it a course, but it's a course plus a community of people that are looking to improve both their consulting business and just their general lives. So a lot of people who have quit their jobs, some at FANGs, some just at normal jobs, who are looking to go beyond just what they were making and actually have some ownership of their projects. So if you want to join them, if you want to join a expanding community of other data engineers, data analysts, data scientists, and honestly, a whole other group of people, and honestly, just general technical freelancers, you should check out the Technical Freelancer Academy below. Again, we are growing right now, and I'm really excited to see everyone join in, provide kind of